Mandy, can you hear me?
I can. Yes, I'm getting on here. Sorry, Zoom was taking its little time.
Yeah, it seemed like you were taking forever to get on there. I like your
Yeah.
clock back there. Is that what that is a clock?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Thank
And
you.
that's your real background, isn't it?
It is my background.
Cool. Okay, I've already done your introduction, so we can just start talking.
Great.
Do you have any questions for me before we get started?
Um, no, I think I saw in the notes that you, if there's any links or free gifts that you promote them in the notes, that we'll just have a conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
Good. Okay,
Awesome.
cool. All right, and Sylvie will tell you for sure what day this runs. I'm thinking it'll be in July.
Okay.
Okay. So I have already done the introduction and I don't have your bio here, but they know already.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Sounds good.
Can you hear me okay? I
I
know so
can.
I've already done 2 podcasts today and I just noticed that my mic was clear across on the other side of my desk. So hopefully they could hear me.
Yep,
All
you're
right.
coming through good.
So, okay, tell me about your job. What you're a trauma.
Yeah, so I am a speaker and a trauma healing guide. I work with nutrition and health coaches,
Uh-huh.
and primarily I do speaking at like the nutrition schools, the health coaching schools, and my desire really is to help bridge the gap between the education they receive and understanding how to decode their clients' behaviors and patterns and sessions to help them understand when that client has potential unresolved traumas or a dysregulated nervous system that's getting in the way of them having the success in their health that they want.
Okay, so I might be getting ahead of us in everything, but if a health coach does distinguish that their customer needs some help with past traumas or even current traumas, do they need to send them to somebody?
Yes, I mean, there are some things that they can do as a health coach. So I teach them some somatic techniques and nervous system regulation techniques to help them learn how to hold the space, hold a real, safe space for that client, that customer, and help bring them back to a state of um, a little bit, bring them out of the state of that trigger or whatever is happening for them. So teaching them some basic skills, how to manage and navigate that situation. If that person has some real traumas, then yes, they should be referring that client out to have that work done. Now, they can work with that client in tandem while they're doing that trauma healing work.
Mhm.
But if they're not trained, if that's outside of their scope of practice, then they should be, referring them out.
Okay. Um, why do you feel trauma healing is important?
Yeah, good question. It's so easy to just want to ignore it, right? We'll just move on. It's important because when we have experienced trauma, and I work with a lot of people primarily who have had childhood trauma. Something has happened in their childhood, could be a big T trauma, little T trauma. During the years where we are developing our brain function, our body function. We're developing our personality, our beliefs, our all the things that influence us. And if we're not able to heal that trauma in a healthy way, when after it happens and it will stay with us. That trauma affects not only our biology, it affects our stress response system, but it affects our beliefs and it affects our behaviors. And so, as we grow up and become adults, that's kind of the lens that we live life through. And it can affect our ability to live life in a healthy way. But when we decide that we need to have improvement in our health, when we're experiencing chronic health issues and we need to improve in that way, we cannot heal ourselves if our body is living in a state of stress that has continued from that early traumas. And so it's important to spend time really incorporating that into our lifestyle, because we can't heal if we're in a state of stress. We can only heal when we're creating space and healing in our bodies. And so it's important for everyone, regardless of whether we're focusing on our health or our relationships or wanting to take a risk and, live our life in a different way. We have to look at our beliefs, our behavior, and our biology and how that has been influenced from our childhood.
Does everybody have trauma in their past?
Yes, for sure. There's different types of traumas there, right? There's generational traumas.
Mhm.
There's, I think to some level, all of us experience some level of trauma with the COVID pandemic. And so there's global traumas, there's generational, there's ancestral, there's all of the traumas that we are born into from our past, families. But we might also experience that in our lifetime, whether that's a big T, like abuse or, neglect, or there's something big happening in the home, or something small where you just didn't feel like you belonged in your home, or you didn't feel like you were seen or heard. Those can have a damaging effect on a child who's developing their self, developing their core being. And so we all have trauma to some level.
And some people leave it behind more than others, or do we not leave it behind?
Meaning, don't
We
like
carry it
tell me
with
what you're
trauma, anything. I mean, just like, okay, so say uh, Johnny fell down and knocked out all of his teeth. And for the rest of his life, he's saying, my teeth are a mess. And this was, this is horrible. And Jane fell down, lost her teeth, and she got $20 from the tooth fairy. So they both had the same experience, but they carry it forward in different
sure.
ways.
Yeah. The I think some people, yes, are able to resolve and move past a traumatic event, depending. And I really think the difference is there a competent, healthy adult with them that can help process that and help them work through that experience?
And what
If
if
you
there isn't?
if
What
there
that,
isn't,
yeah.
then we feel alone. We feel like we've done something to cause the trauma. We feel like we're at fault. We're broken. What did we do? And that's self preservation as a child, trying to figure out how do I keep myself alive by making it about me. And if there's no one there to help me process it, I'm going to hold all that shame. I'm going to hold all that fear. I'm going to hold all that physical pain, mental pain, emotional pain in my body until I'm able to take a look at that. And that might be years and years down the line until we have that ability to do that.
Then how would it exhibit itself? How could it? I mean, no, you don't know for sure, but what are some ways?
Yeah. Well, physically, that can look like anything from digestive problems, anything from hormonal imbalances. Thyroid disease is a big one when someone has felt like they've had to repress or not speak up about what's happening. Might manifest as a thyroid condition. We see it as anxiety, depression, right? Like, these places might be heart, might be lungs, where I have asthma, don't feel like I can breathe. It could show up as emotional outbursts, not being able to regulate your emotions. So you're high and then you're low, or you're, angry, or you're depressed. It could show up as behaviors like perfectionism, workaholism, really restrictive behaviors of restricting food, restricting joy, restricting experiences because I feel like I need to control my life because it felt so out of control as a child.
We're not going to talk about the people that are running for president when I ask you this. But um, what are some typical mistakes you see leaders making when they are trying to heal from unresolved trauma?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake I see is, and I've done this too. So I've been on my own journey, healing my own stuff. But there's a belief, I think a common misbelief of that I'm going to go get therapy, or I'm going to go do this thing, and I'm going to work on this specific thing. And it's going to be for a specific amount of time, 3 months, whatever we have in our head. We have these expectations, right? I'm going to go see this person. It's going to be done in 3 months. I'll be out of there and I'll be able to live my life again. And the reality is that is not how it works. We have something in our head, this idea of it needs to be just like one of the other tasks that we're doing in our life. And when it comes to healing from traumas, when it comes from really healing from our inside out of our body, that is a complicated, interconnected web of things that we have to unpack, and it takes time, and often we have to go slower than we think we really should, because our nervous systems most likely are in a state of dysfunction in some way. They're either, we're either hyper stressed, we're either, hyper depressed, or we're cycling through in the middle somewhere. And our nervous systems can't open up to that healing automatically. We can't just like dive deep into the pool, because our bodies will restrict and will push us back into those behaviors that are impacting our health. So yeah, it is, the biggest mistake is thinking, we are going to do this just like any other task. It takes time. And then the other thing too is trying to rush it. We have to realize that it took so much time for us to realize we had this and we needed to work on it. So it's going to take probably a longer amount of time. It's not going to be 6 weeks, 3 months, you know, 6 months. It might be a lot longer than that. And we have to really give ourselves a lot of grace and compassion in that process.
Yeah, I could see myself kind of making deals with it. Like if I had to journal every day, let's get it over with. So let's journal 2 or 3 times a day. I can go for a
Yeah.
month instead of 3 months.
Yeah. Right. Yes.
So if there's something that you can recommend to start doing today, that would be helpful for leaders, if they feel like they're having any of the symptoms of unresolved trauma.
Mhm.
And first of all, define leaders. Who are leaders?
Well, I think we're all a leader to some degree, right? We might be a leader of ourself. We could be a leader in our home, a parent. We could be
Mhm.
a leader at our work. We could be a coach. You could be a corporate leader. I think it really, for me personally, it runs the gamut. In my eyes, we're all leaders. We're all leaders of our destiny. We're all leaders of our life. We're all leaders of what we want to create in the world. And so I think for anybody who is starting to recognize, oh gosh, this kind of sounds like me, or maybe there's a recognition of, I know I have some trauma in my past. The first thing I think that's so important is self-awareness, and really paying attention to, what are my feelings? How do I show up day to day? So when I wake up in the morning, what is my initial thought? How am I feeling in my body? When I'm at home, how am I feeling versus when I'm working? How am I feeling? How am I feeling when I'm around one person or a different person? Starting to really get a sense for, what is your body, what is your nervous system like as you move through the day. That can give you a starting point to see, am I in a state of sympathetic nervous system? So am I fight or flight responses? Am I angry? Am I, on the go? Am I stressed? Am I overstressed? Am I, rushing to conclusions? Am I, you know, do I have emotional outbursts? Do I have a hard time communicating what I need? All of these things can really be a starting point to know, where am I at today, and where can I go? What support do I need in the future? And then I think the second thing really is noticing your breath. So breath is such a big, important
Mhm.
part of our nervous system, and helps to open us up or constrict us, helps to move energy through our body, helps us in the process of healing, and just paying attention to what your breath is doing throughout the day. When we are in a state of stress or dysregulation in our nervous system, we often aren't breathing. And, at the basic level, we're not getting the oxygen into our cells and in our brain and throughout our body to really help us operate throughout the day. So self-awareness, I think, is the first one. Second one is noticing your breath. And then the third one would be just noticing your thoughts. What are my thoughts? What am I saying to myself throughout the day? Oh, in traffic, I took the wrong turn. Oh, I'm such an idiot. At work, I didn't turn that project in right away. Gosh, what's wrong with me? As we start to go on the process of healing, looking at how we treat ourselves can be an indicator of how we were treated as a child. And so self-awareness and paying attention to how we're operating day to day, really, I think is the first thing that everyone should be doing to help inform their plan for going forward.
Okay, normally health coaches work with people on lifestyle changes. What kind of lifestyle
Yeah.
changes would you recommend for
Yeah.
somebody that's trying to overcome or deal with trauma?
Yeah. So I love this I call it a be kind to your nervous system lifestyle. So if we've been in a state of stress, if someone has trauma, most likely their system has been operating in some level of stress since that trauma occurred until today. And that stress has, contributed to their health problems. So a be kind to your nervous system lifestyle is building time in the day, even 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, wherever they can, where they are connecting to their senses, where they're connected to putting their bare feet in the grass, where they're outside in the sun, where they're getting outside of their environment and into a place where they can tap into their five senses and bring them back to their present moment. Someone who's had a lot of trauma is most often oscillating from worrying about the future, worrying about something that happened in the past. They're never in the present moment. They're never in their body. And so a lifestyle practice that's really simple is just helping them build in practices every day to tap into their five senses, to bring them back to the present moment, bring them back to their body, take a few breaths, recognizing that they have this body here that's leading them throughout their day as well. But that would be one of my biggest tips. It sounds just super simple and almost like silly, but it's a really big deal for someone who's got some trauma in their past.
Yeah, that would seem like it would be very important just to calm down, right?
Yeah. Yeah. To send a signal to their nervous system that I'm safe right now. It's okay to relax. It's okay to breathe. I'm not in imminent danger. I can handle what's happening in my life in this moment. Um, but if we rush to another protocol, like, something more deeper, if they haven't done the work already to help their nervous system recognize those signals, oftentimes ourselves will reject that healing. So we have to really start at the basic level of telling our nervous system, telling our bodies, I'm safe right now. I'm okay right now. I can breathe. I can, be present in this moment. It's okay.
If a health coach were to find themselves working with somebody who was dealing with traumas, do they stop everything else and just deal with the trauma, or do they make that just a part of their process?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, how do you adjust for someone who potentially has that trauma? First and foremost, we have to recognize that, and I did this in my early days as a coach, as a a nutrition coach, and I've seen it with others too, where sometimes someone comes to us and they say, "Oh, I wasn't able to follow, what we agreed to these things I was going to do this next week. I wasn't able to do them." And so as a health coach, sometimes we get into strategy mode of like, "Okay, well, let's try this. Let's maybe do this. Let's change this." And we have to recognize if that person has trauma, we have to slow it down, and we have to stop the kind of strategizing and the pushing, but rather If they're working on their traumas, that can be a part of our support with them too. We can work in tandem with what they're doing. We don't have to stop. We just have to maybe spend a little bit more time creating a safe container in the session with them, letting them process a little bit more from the emotional perspective. How's this really working for you right now? How's this feeling? I'm for you right now. Oh, I'm feeling so overwhelmed. I just don't feel like I can do this thing. I don't feel like I can make this work. Okay, I get it. Just having a little bit more of a slower down conversation about acknowledging what's going on. The strategy can still come in there, but less of a forefront and more of a kind of background.
I have encountered this. I'm not a coach and I would make a horrible coach, but I could be a coach, but I wouldn't do anybody any good. But my question is this: when working with some people, even with like business, you get a few people who they always have drama. And it's like they always in what's the word for it? They increase the trauma. Do you know what I mean? They build it up and they
Yeah.
make it a part of what do you do with people like that? I mean, that's all they talk about. They can't move forward. They just
Yeah. Right.
always have excuses because of that too. And I
Sure.
don't mean to sound unempathetic, but I mean, sometimes you run into people who they just center on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think the important part as the health coach is feeling confident enough to bring this up in the conversation in the session and saying, if that's a pattern, if that you're seeing that over and over again, then it's bringing it up in conversation and saying, hey, I'm noticing something here, and I'd like to bring it up and talk about it because I think it's impacting your ability to meet your goals. So I'm assuming at some point the health coach has worked with them to identify what are my goals in working with me. So that health coach should bring it up and say, hey, look, I'm noticing this pattern. We talk about these things. You go live your life, you come back and see me, and I'm not seeing progress being made, or I'm noticing that
Mhm.
things keep popping up in your life. I'm noticing that this external thing keeps distracting you from making progress. And although I'm not although this is out of my scope, I might say to them, I know this is out of my scope, but I do know that sometimes when we are in a state of chaos or stress in our bodies, that can manifest outside in our life, and that can impact your ability to make change. There might be something, from your past, like, a trauma or something that could be lingering in your system and creating a state where you're not feeling safe enough to make these changes health wise. Would you be open to if I referred you to someone to work on that? And if they say no, if they say yes, great. Hopefully we have some referrals we can send them. If they say no, then the conversation from the coach is, well, here's the thing, I can only take you so far in your healing
That's what I was
protocol
yeah.
if you're not willing to do this work, because this work works in tandem with what we're doing here. It's interconnected. So if you're not willing to focus on it, we are only going to be, we can't be successful.
Very good. So you're allowed to say that you need to deal with this, otherwise we're not getting anywhere, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think that's an important part for the health coach to feel confident enough to have that conversation. Because ultimately their success is your success as the health coach, right?
Mhm.
You want them to be successful. And I think really empathizing with them and saying, hey, I understand life happens, stuff happens, but I'm noticing this as a pattern. And I can't help you be successful in the ways you want, that you've told me are important to you, if we're not also looking at this in terms of, traumas.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I can't think of any other questions. You have a free gift for our audience, right?
I do.
At least I have it written down here that you do. It's traumahealingforcoaches.com/break is the,
Yes.
okay. And what is the free gift?
So this is my free gift called Breaking the Chains. And this is a mini video learning series that has all sorts of information for coaches on how to identify the patterns and the behaviors in a client that might be demonstrating to you and give you the signs that they're operating with some trauma or a dysregulated nervous system. We go into the science and studies behind the connection between trauma and chronic health. And there are some practical tips and techniques for how to support that client. And there's a workbook and lots of videos and audios and resources in there too to help them outside of that training and apply them with their clients.
That's great. So we'll have that and we'll have your website listed underneath the podcast. And thank you so much. This has been educational. I know
Yeah.
that, I know everybody has to come up against this, and if they can get through that, then they can maybe get a little bit more progress. And you get the successful people who want to get it right now.
Yeah.
And probably if you deal with that, they can get right now a lot quicker, right?
Absolutely. The people who are willing and able to spend the time in this area are going to see the results. It's the folks who are wanting to ignore it or sweep it
Mhm.
under the rug that are going to have a harder time. And, I came up against this as a health coach early on of not feeling confident enough to have the dialogue and to hold the space for those
Mhm.
clients who had the traumas. And so that's really my mission here is helping coaches feel confident in those sessions to one, know how to identify it, two, know how to support it, and three, how to speak to it confidently so that you're as successful as you can as a coach.
Great. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you. It was so great. I appreciate it.
Okay, that was good. We won't even have to edit any of it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Sylvia will let you know when it goes, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks. Bye.
Have a good day. Bye.
You too.